Program notes, as you probably all are aware, is something that is usually given by the performer before one of the classical pieces that they play in order to give the audience a bit more information on how the piece came to be, circumstances surrounding it, and even some of the musical nuances that they may hear within the piece. And hopefully the goal of them is that by the time the notes are over with, you just can't wait to hear that piece. You're very excited about it. And so it makes the whole experience richer for you. So this is something that the students will move into, but it's also something that's really kind of hard to do because you're nervous enough about your piece, and then to have to give notes ahead of time it's a jump. So I'm going to give the notes for Winston and Victoria's next pieces for them. These notes were compiled by Aaron Green. Ludwig van Beethoven composed the famous Moonlight Sonata in 1801 after agreeing to instruct Countess Giulietta Guiccardi, the cousin of his two students, Therese and Josephine Brunswick, whom he had been teaching since 1799. Guiccardi was known for her beauty, and when she and her family moved to Vienna from Poland in 1800, she was quickly noticed by upper society. Shortly after their first few lessons, the two fell in love. When Beethoven finished his new sonata, he dedicated it to Guiccardi, and it is believed he proposed to her quickly thereafter. Although she was willing to accept Beethoven's proposal, one of her parents forbid her ever to marry him, likely due to their differing social statuses, and sadly, they never did. Guiccardi later became engaged to Count von Gallenberg and married him on November 14, 1803. Typically, composers would write music after receiving a commission to do so. They had bills to pay too, after all. However, based on the evidence, or lack thereof, Beethoven wrote Moonlight Sonata without receiving a commission. The original title of the sonata is Quasi una fantasia, in Italian, almost a fantasy. The popular moniker Moonlight Sonata actually didn't come about until roughly 5 years after Beethoven's death in 1827. In 1832, German music critic Ludwig Rellstab wrote that the sonata reminded him of the reflected moonlight off Lake Lucerne. And since then, Moonlight Sonata has remained the unofficial title of the sonata. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Beethoven performed the world premiere of his Moonlight Sonata. By that time, Beethoven's loss of hearing was well into its advanced stages, so he was known to play louder than one typically would. It is said that during the sonata's third movement, which you will hear tonight, Beethoven was performing with so much intensity, several of the strings snapped. The third movement is completely different from the previous two movements. Its rapid progressions from note to note are invigorating and powerful. The third movement is actually marked piano, meaning to be played quietly, but Beethoven's use of sforzandos and fortissimos make the piece actually sound as if the overall dynamic was fortissimo. Here is Winston Choi with the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata.